Welcome to the Go Global Ed podcast, brought to you by the International and Foreign Language Education Office, also known as IFLE, at the U.S. Department of Education. On the Go Global Ed podcast, we speak with IFLE grant and fellowship recipients to highlight their experiences, discuss issues in international and foreign language education, share advice on the application process, and explore the long-term value and impact of IFLE's programs. In celebration of International Education Week 2021, and the 60th anniversary of Fulbright-Hays, today on the podcast, a member of the IFLE team, Matt Robinson, speaks to Dr. Corey Holmes, Senior Professional Staff Member, Foreign Policy Advisor for the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Africa, Global Health, and Global Human Rights. Dr. Holmes was a Fulbright-Hays Group Projects Abroad Fellow in 2017 and 18 and studied Zulu in South Africa. Let's listen.
So Corey Holmes, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So why don't we begin by, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what you do for your career?
I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I've been in Washington, D.C. since 2012. I originally came here to work for the State Department. Was there for 2 years, mostly in the Africa Bureau. And then I went on to Howard University to receive my PhD. And so after that, I'm actually doing what I'm currently doing, which is Senior Professional Staff Member, Foreign Policy Advisor for the House Foreign Affairs Africa Subcommittee.
Oh, wow. And so you mentioned Howard University. It was through Howard that you went on the Group Projects Abroad trip to study Zulu. Is that right?
So obviously I went to Howard University, but the program was through UPenn. So my Solwazi, which is professor, she reached out to my Solwazi at Howard University, Dr. Mnyandu, and she basically was like, I need some students who can apply for this program. It's a very exciting program. 90 days, it's a commitment. And he was like, well, let me see. And so it ended up being, I think, 3 of us, but I was the oldest. The other students were undergraduate students. Obviously, I was a grad student at that point. And so that's actually how I applied to the Fulbright-Hays GPA.
Oh, okay.
And we still talk, by the way, myself and Dr. Mbeje. Great person.
So why don't you take us back to how you started to get the interest in studying Zulu in the first place? Zulu isn't a commonly taught language, right?
Right.
So what interested you to learn Zulu?
Right. So I always tell people that South Africa is my second home. With that being said, I worked there from 2009 to 2010, so roughly around 14 months, with the Randburg Chamber of Commerce, also the South African Chamber of Commerce. And so obviously, most people know that there are 11 official languages in South Africa. isiZulu being one of what they would call local languages, right? And so out of those indigenous or local languages, isiZulu is probably the one that's spoken most throughout the country. And frankly, it's one of the few in South Africa, one of the few South African languages that are taught in American institutions, Kiswahili, Tanzania and Kenya, Yoruba in Nigeria, come to mind as well, but the South African language is isiZulu. And so it was actually taught, it was offered. South Africa is, like I said, is my second home. It's my favorite place to be. I want to live there when I retire. And so it was just a slam dunk.
Oh, so you must have had some command of Zulu before you started the program for GPA.
Somewhat. The crazy thing about working there in 2009, was most people wanted to speak English, right? Because, a lot of places where you go overseas, particularly when you're working with young people, it's the cultural aspect, right, of speaking English, the hip hop community, the fashion industry. So everything is in English, right? And so when I would say, hey, I want to practice my isiZulu or other local languages, because like I said, there are 11 official, but 9 are local, what they would call Bantu languages, Black African languages. And they would be like, no, we can get to that later. Let's help me work on my English first. right? And so, it was kind of a negotiation, if you will. All right, I'll help you with your English this week, and you help me with my EC Zulu the following week.
So I want to pick up on another point that you mentioned, which was that your interest in South Africa is ongoing and that you want to go back again. So you're very enthusiastic about your experience traveling to South Africa. What about the experience made it special for you?
Wow. First and foremost, the people, right? SA, South Africa is such a vibrant place to be musically. I'm a jazz aficionado, so jazz is richly ingrained in the culture there. The food, the wine, it's the best wine, in the world. But also the politics. So for me, when I first got there, I was not into politics. My first 2 degrees were in business. And going there really kind of piqued my interest in the political sphere, if you will, which kind of led me into what I'm doing today. And so going back, I would say the people, the culture, and the politics. I was able to write a paper on former President Jacob Zuma, who is now, if anybody's following in the news, they gave him 6 months for bribery. I never thought that would happen. And Thabo Mbeki, and hopefully we'll discuss him a little later, who was the president right after Nelson Mandela, who I believe after Kofi Annan, this generation's African leaders, he's right up there. Intellectual, but while he was president, most of the citizenry, if you will, couldn't really understand or grasp what he was trying to do, which was agency, give his folks agency, right? Give his citizens agency. And so maybe we'll touch on that in the later question.
So it sounds like your experiences there, it has even shaped your career afterwards and your interests. Was there anything in particular about the trip that, any experiences that led you to that?
So I was actually a Thabo Mbeki African leader, which he affectionately called a change agent. This was where you had to apply to several courses, whether they were in socio-political economics, global development, or politics. And the courses were held at UNISA, University of South Africa in Pretoria. So I applied to that, got into that, very rigorous, intensive courses. And then obviously I got a chance to meet him in Pretoria at the University of South Africa. I was like, I'm here, and also while going forward a little bit, when I received my BORN back to South Africa in 2018 to finish my PhD, one of the UNISA, one of the Timali professors, Professor Gumede, he actually was one of my sitting advisors from the Timali program. And so that for me, kind of telling folks about my dissertation, the effects of youth employment on Gauteng, which is the smallest province in South Africa, but obviously it is the economic hub, definitely of the southern region, not just South Africa. The South African Stock Exchange is there, as well as, a plethora of multinational companies.
So, okay, you have a great trip to South Africa. I'm just thinking, and you come back to the US. What happens afterwards? What do you do after an experience like this?
Wow.
How has it shaped your career? Has it shaped your life in different ways? Or
yeah, well, for me, so having the Fulbright gave me a chance to conduct preliminary research. So I wasn't yet on my full dissertation. I had just finished comprehensive exams, and so the Fulbright-Hays gave me an opportunity not only to strengthen my EC Zulu, but also conduct research at Witwatersrand, like I said, at UNISA, UJ, University of Johannesburg, meet with different professors at those institutions. And so when I came back, for me, it was the start of the writing process, right? Because in my mind, I had an end goal, I had a date of when I wanted to obviously graduate and, start putting some of this theoretical stuff, if you will, into practicality, right? And so I came back and wrote every day. That's what it looked like. Because at that point, I was done with my coursework at Howard. So every day I picked a set time to write. Some days were better than others, and any writer would tell you this, right? And we just hammered it out.
And you
so
did
that
it.
was basically, 6 months, I would say. So 6 months. So I got back in August. So I think it was June to August, the program, early June to mid-August.
Mhm.
So August through December was writing, and I defended my draft and was ready for the second part of the dissertation.
Congratulations, by the way. Not a
Seems
small
like
accomplishment.
Seems like a lifetime ago now.
So how about more on the personal side? I mean, you did stay with a host family while you were there, right?
Right.
So what was that like? I mean, was it memorable?
My go-go. So obviously that's grandma. So she had worked for the SA government, but she was newly retired. And her husband, he still worked. So we lived in KwaZulu-Natal, in Pagini to be exact. So it's probably from Durban, I would say almost 2 hours driving from Durban. He would leave every Sunday to go back to Durban to work and stay the whole week. So really, I would only see him from late Friday, and it was usually Saturday, and then some Sunday. Their grandson lived with them. He was a treat. So he actually helped me with a lot of translations, because Isi Zulu is a very technical language, which I learned at the University of Zululand, right? I learned the basics at Howard University, but obviously where it was created, University of Zululand, it's constructing sentences and paragraphs and, using different phrases and knowing when to use different phrases. And so it was very technical, and it was very hard, if you will, right? It took a lot of practice and a lot of dedication, and that young man helped me out tremendously. I talked to the family not as often as I did when I first got back to the States. I probably talked to them maybe 2 or 3 times a year now via email, and it's mostly through his email, right? But yeah, I really want to get a chance to go back and see them, because they really made my stay. I mean, they gave me 3 square meals. I mean, wherever I wanted to go during the weekend, over the weekend, they would say, hey, we will take you. We know that you're a young man and you might want to get out. Yeah, so I really appreciate them. And that's key to any great study abroad program, right? Not only the technical aspect, right, the academic side of it, but the right host family.
Yes. I mean, that's a whole nother aspect to the experience, isn't it? It's not just about the academics and the training, right? It's
not at all.
The cross-cultural experience.
Absolutely. Finding a good fit. Yep. Definitely another key component to my fellowship was I got a chance to do something specifically like this. It was a youth radio station in downtown Johannesburg. And it was definitely the highlight besides T-Molly, right? So it was different highlight for different reasons. But I was so impressed by this youth ran organization, news station, radio station, if you will. Because all you hear in South Africa, and my dissertation says it, of the fact that young people don't have any opportunities. Young people hold the highest unemployment rates. And then you have other folks in South Africa say, well, we don't have the human capital. We have a lot of jobs, but we don't have the human capital to fill these jobs. And so to see this youth ran radio station, and they actually wanted me to, they actually gave me a 45-minute radio interview. It was amazing, man. It was amazing. They were like, and they were kind of looking at me like, why are you so, like, no, this is special. This is You met Thabo and Becky, you met the president, you met this person, that person. Yeah, but no, you don't get it. Like, because I hear the narrative of what you all don't do, can't do, won't do. And I'm seeing it right in front of me. Those stories aren't told often. I think there was a question about, what has the program done for you?
Yeah, okay.
What advice would you give to anyone applying? And for me, the experience forever changed my lens, the way I see the world, right? You have new experiences, you meet new people, you learn different cultures. And I was a little older, but I would definitely say this for a younger person applying. You develop a sense of empathy and compassion as any semblance of entitlement kind of dissolves, right? You see that the world is not, as I see it in my own little bubble, compared to this situation, because there's always a worse situation. So there's perspective there that I think a young person can gain from traveling abroad. Secondly, see, I'm a person of color, and in my day job, we talk about diversity and inclusion at the State Department, at USAID, and the Peace Corps, and all various agencies. What I would say on the academic side is twofold. A lot of folks don't talk about exposure, because this is what this kind of program does for someone who might not have come from a background that can afford it without a Fulbright. And so I would say for a young person, particularly of color, you have to take a language anyway to graduate, right? It's part of the academic rigorous schedule. So I would say follow up with your language if it's not your prof, the department head, and see what study abroad programs are at your institution. For Howard University, it's the Ralph Bunche Center, right? All things are housed there. And so we have people who can show young students different opportunities that they can specifically apply for. But the student it's the age-old adage of, I can lead you to water, but I can't make you drink it. And so I would say, but you have to follow up. You have to want it. And once people see that you want it, they will help you in abundance, right? And so for me, it's in 2021, I just want it to be equitable. I want it to be fair. I think the process is transparent, but I think a lot of times there are not a lot of people of color who apply. And so that kind of skews the numbers. But also, let's not be naive and say, hey, those that don't apply don't get a fair shake for whatever reason, right? Whether it's, they didn't prepare like they needed to, or didn't know how, right? Didn't have the necessary resources to prepare. And so that's something that we as folks that consider ourselves stakeholders really need to take a look at.
Do you feel that you had good support when you were in the application process?
I had people looking over my essays, and I consider myself an avid writer. And still you want second eyes and possibly third eyes looking over your application, because they can see things you can't because you're so close to it and you want it so bad. And so you need to step back and say, hey, take a look at this, give me your thoughts, and then I can revise it and make it the best application possible. And that's not necessarily to say that you will get it, right? Because, but at least put your best foot forward and be exposed. I mean, again, for me, the key word is exposure. So knowing about these programs, applying to these programs, not being afraid, apply, do your due diligence, follow up, and then show passion and go for it. Because usually when people show passion for things they want, they usually get them. It's usually a pretty decent percentage.
Corey Holmes, it was a pleasure talking with you. And thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate it. I'm a proud alum of the Fulbright-Hays GPA program. I always tell young people to apply to these different high achieving merit awards. And hopefully people will be seeing me in a university classroom near you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Go Global Ed podcast, a production of the International and Foreign Language Education Office at the U.S. Department of Education. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Go Global Ed and subscribe to our newsletter to learn more about upcoming podcast episodes and other IFLE updates.